the joys of his autism, as aware he is of his autism, he's also that unaware of it. He didn't let social peers and social stresses get to him. So he truly was able to live his life a little more freer than you and I.
Welcome back to Straight Talk on Life Issues. I'm Victor Nieves, as always, joined by Brad Mattis. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. April is Autism Awareness Month.
And parenting is hard, said every parent. And parenting an autistic child is even harder. In 2013, the term autism spectrum disorder was coined, and the term Asperger's was included under that umbrella term.
That's right. Autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, is a complex, lifelong neurodevelopmental condition characterized by differences in social interaction, communication, sensory processing, and behavioral patterns.
And here's some alarming statistics, so everybody listen up. Based on the statistics from Autism Parent Magazine, 1 in 36 kids were diagnosed with autism in 2024. In the year 2000, it was 1 in 150.
An alarming statistic for sure. And, the autism spectrum, it reflects a wide range of experiences, challenges, and even strengths, making each person's journey entirely unique.
And it's typically identified in early childhood, but ASD can be diagnosed at any age, including adulthood.
That's right. And today we'll learn more as we speak with our guest on this topic. First joining us is Scott LeRette. He's a recovering addict whose life is full of challenges, stumbles, as well as humble wins, glorious successes, and a gratitude for it all. He's an author and executive producer of a major motion picture titled The Unbreakable Boy, which released in February of 2025 by Lionsgate. We're also joined by Teresa, his wife. She's been married to Scott for more than 30 years. They're partners in everything that they do, and she's a content creator of fun, faith-filled, and joyful messages. We'll also be joined by their son, Austin, for a star guest appearance. Scott, Teresa, and Austin, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us.
Teresa, you have osteogenesis imperfecta. Could you tell us a little more about that and how that's impacting your life and your family?
Well, I grew up with it, of course. I was always breaking things. And, when I was a baby and a toddler and a young child, because that's when you see most of the breaks, because you're just a child. You're not aware of your surroundings or trying to be careful. And I was pretty rambunctious, so I was always breaking things, getting a cast off one morning, and then by that evening breaking something else. But I wasn't actually diagnosed till I was 12 years old when I went to the eye doctor. There just wasn't a lot known about OI at that time. So he took one look at my eyes and asked about my health, and then recommended that we go see some doctors over in Duke University in North Carolina, because he had a concern that I could have osteogenesis imperfecta. So it is basically, my bones are kind of like chalk. And so I can't do any contact sports or physical activity that would put me in danger of getting hurt. But, it can happen, I can sneeze and break, or something. So it is something that I've lived with. It was a concern when we were pregnant with Austin, because it is a genetic disorder. But again, we even went through a geneticist to see what we could do to see if Austin was going to have OI. And again, we just felt like the odds of doing anything invasive to find that information out before he was born, it didn't matter, because whatever the outcome is, he still was going to be our baby. We weren't going to,
wasn't going to change anything.
It was going to change any of us not having our child. So we just went, okay, if he does, he does. We deal with it, just like my parents dealt with it. And so it's difficult,
Yeah.
It's really difficult, because we do everything that we do. We have to first think about our safety.
I have 3 very dear friends who have osteogenesis imperfecta, and they have dwarfism.
Yeah, and I think that at one point we kind of took this proverbial bubble off of Austin because we were so paranoid. We were so worried about him breaking something. And at one point, I don't even recall what age it was. I have no idea. But we just made this conscious decision to just kind of let him go. And he went for the longest time without breaking a bone. because we were just so coddling him and so protecting him and had that bubble, the parental bubble around him. And it was probably doing more harm than good. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, though, about your friends, because I've met this young lady and I think she's probably older than I think she is, but she made a comment about the film and about Austin not looking like he has OI or looking like her, because she has dwarfism too. And I said, it's kind of like autism. There's this spectrum of how it presents,
Yeah.
and God bless you, because it presents this way with you. And for Austin, he's probably had as many broken bones as you, and in him it just is a different presentation. That's all.
Yeah, he had a classmate in kindergarten who actually had it, and it just affected the
Right.
bones in his legs. And he had very short stature. And I was definitely his major advocate when it came to school, making sure that he got the same accommodations and the same opportunities every child in school, not only because of his autism, but even with his brittle bones. Because when I found out I had OI, they immediately took me out of physical education. So there was no
Yeah.
adapting the physical education to my physical needs. So I took a lot of wood shop.
Well, Scott and Teresa, tell us, how did you both feel when you initially learned about Austin's autism spectrum? And then what were some of the emotional challenges that you two faced?
Well, I think for me, it was just wanting to know because, first time parent, you don't know, is this the things that he's doing? Is this atypical? I mean, I didn't even think about autism. I didn't even know about autism.
30 years ago.
Yeah. And then my neighbor had mentioned something she'd read in an article in the newspaper and said, Tia, I think you should read this, and because I was always trying to figure him out and search and go, okay, what's going on here? And my nephew had extreme ADD, and I'm like, well, maybe it's ADD, ADHD, but then when Logan came along, and we saw the huge difference in social interactions and things like that. That's when the light bulb for me went off. But again, he wasn't diagnosed till he was 14 because he is so verbal. And definitely when you have a conversation with him, if it's something that he's extremely passionate about, he's highly intelligent about that subject. So at first you would not pick up on his autism, but then as your conversation goes, you will understand where his struggles are.
When we moved back from North Carolina, well, I should say when we moved to Iowa, we had friends and even family. I'll never forget this though, because it was a month or two later where we had friends and family alike who were like, oh my gosh, we had no idea. Because from afar, you hear, oh, he broke a bone, or he did this, or he's autistic and he talks a lot, and sunshine and rainbows, and he's this sweet looking kid, and everybody loves him, and this and that. But I'll just say that the challenges we have today with Austin, they may be fewer, but they're more profound for sure.
But the joys of his autism,
Yeah.
especially for him in school, is that as aware he is of his autism, he's also that unaware of it, that wearing his favorite hat or loving something so extreme where other kids might think, well, that's just silly. He didn't let social peers and social stresses get to him. So he truly was able to live his life a little more freer than you and I, because he lives his life to the fullest. And I think also with the current climate that we're in, as far as, there's just such this vitriol of political, either you're left or right, or, Oswald will tell you why he's a Republican. He'll say, when I was ready to start high school, I could not wait for a la carte. That's all he talked about. He was going to get to choose a la carte. And that year is when Michelle Obama, with her healthy eating in school and changing the school cafeterias, they changed a la carte. He no longer could get a la carte. So he was
Still talks about that.
Yes.
He still talks
I
about
remember
that.
that.
He will never
Just for the
vote
record.
other than for Republican. So it's so
Because that's
so
school
good.
lunch.
Yes, yes.
Well, tell
And
him that I relate to that because the
yes,
exact
that's all he
same
could.
thing happened to me. I know
Yes,
so
yes.
many young people that say the same thing.
One thing that I'll never forget, and it happened a little bit with the book, but more so with the movie. I am kind of shocked at the critics, and I'm not jumping into that. I don't want to change gears that much, but the one thing that I've heard, and even within the autism world, there's a subset of that world that they're, I want to say, almost militant. And they have criticized me for making this book and this movie about, oh, it's a dad who wants to feel good about himself and he wants to fix his kid. And I never respond. You can't respond to critics. It's not worth it. It's kind of funny because after a while you realize exactly who and what they are. They're the same type of person. It's like a cookie cutter mold. But they bring that up though about wanting to fix this mistake. And I have to tell you, I would love to talk to that person in person because I tell you what, Austin has more joy and love in his little pinky than any 10 people combined. However,
Mm,
there are days where he'll have a seizure, multiple seizures, or I'll walk in and he'd be rubbing his eyes and just tears and his face is red. He's like, why did God do this? If I could have a pill to cure it today, I'd take it right now. And those people, though, those critics are like, we're not here to be fixed. We don't need to be fixed. Well, you know what? My son thinks differently, and that's his reality as being an
mm,
autistic person. And there are days he wishes he could fix it.
I'm
But
sure.
then there are days where he believes that his autism is his superpower.
And he's not afraid. And what I really
But
love about him, he is so not afraid to tell you how much he loves Jesus. And that is, for me,
Ah,
if there's anything that I'm so thankful that we instilled in our children is the love of Jesus and that he does not make mistakes.
how do you know if a child has autism?
here's the deal. There are markers and things like that that I think that you look for, but Austin wasn't diagnosed until he was just in his teens. Today they're diagnosing kids at 1 year old. I still am trying to wrap my brain around that, how that works, because when do you determine they're just being a kid and when do you determine that that's not being a kid? But I think early on you're looking at things like how verbal they are, the attention they spend on certain things. The classic ones are the, social, the physiological, the stimming, the ticking. Austin has that. You have to really look to find the things that he does. He does a choo-choo train. He's 30 years old. He still does that all the time, when he gets nervous.
Yeah.
And
Just certain ticks and phrases. He has severe OCD.
What have been some of the challenges you faced raising Austin?
Well, I think especially one of the biggest challenges was just not knowing, what Austin's diagnosis was, because I just felt like I just want to know. I think it's that trying to figure it out kind of thing. And when
And
I
there's no blood test, right?
no, there's no blood
Mm.
test. And when I finally let go and said, okay, it doesn't matter what it is. God, this is our challenge. Help us figure it out. So I think definitely school, because not only do we have to advocate for his IP for his autism, but even with his brittle bones. So for me, I had to really surrender because fear is the enemy's way to attack you and to create that wedge between you and God. And so for me, was just letting go. But I think our biggest struggles were at the time just dealing with other people who didn't understand or who didn't want to understand in the
Mm.
education field because there was just a handful. I praise educators because they are definitely underpaid. But there are some people, just like some people who shouldn't work in customer service, who shouldn't be a hairdresser. There are certain people that just should not be educators. And so it wasn't trying to mold Austin to fit in. It was trying to get other people to accept him for who he was and the positive things of what autism.
What
Uh,
were some of the challenges you faced from the outside world? Like you mentioned, the teachers. Give us some specifics of why they were challenging at times.
I think that they weren't educated. To her point about educators, though, we found that they were much more dialed in than the person that was probably making 2 or 3 times the salary, that was educated, that had the doctorate, that was the head of the special education. We had the best luck with them in helping Austin and this and that. I'll never forget, though, there was one specific teacher. He was a coach for a certain sport, and he made the comment to the principal that because Austin wanted to go on a trip or go to state or something, it really doesn't matter. But he made the comment outright, we're not going to make an accommodation for him.
Ooh.
He was so uneducated on special needs, on the law. When I heard this, I was taken aback. I had to leave the room. I recall saying, "Say that again. What did you just say?" Because that's the one thing that special education should have when needed. You see, because we always had Austin mainstreamed absolutely in everything possible that we could. But in the certain scenarios and circumstances, we had accommodations and had certain classes that we chose to put him into. But there were accommodations, and that was to make things as wonderful an experience in school for Austin as could be made. So to hear that was just like poof.
Well, let me ask you this. Through your journey, you've obviously faced a lot of different things, but what's been the greatest lesson that you've learned through Austin?
I think that's a pretty easy one. I mean, this is an easy one to choose anyway. It was that he's so comfortable in his own skin that it's not that he doesn't care, because he cares deeply. But in terms of, like Teresa said, wearing a hat, what he wears, what he listens to, what he watches, what he does, he tries to squeeze every drop of joy and love that he can. And I wish I could have so much of that. And I try, but I just can't. I know I'm not there where he is with that. He wants to meet every single new person. And I think that he cares more deeply about the brokenest. That's a word. It is. Look it up. He cares more deeply the more broken someone is. That's the person that he wants to bring home for a slumber party. And believe me, because he tries to do it sometimes, and we're like us. But I wish I was more like that.
I guess unconditional love. Of course, we all have unconditional love for our children, our family. For me, because I saw this in my mother, and one of my favorite scriptures is 1 Corinthians 13:13. Faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. And I think just love, we're so hyper aware of every minute thing that goes on in a person's life. And for society, if it doesn't fit your mold, that person can be easily discarded. And for Austin, he sees the good in everybody. So we've had to really protect him in that sense too, because that's a way of him getting taken advantage of. But I never want him to lose that little spirit of his, of just love unconditionals.
It sounds like the world would be a better place if we could all be a little more like Austin.
Well, some of what you've said is what we've heard from parents who have children with Down syndrome about the love and the way they see the world, and that they enjoy the world in ways that we just dream of enjoying it. So it's great to hear those comments said. How has he made a difference in your lives and the lives of others?
Well, what I would say is that when you meet Austin, everything about you, he is going to immediately fall in love with, whether it's the shirt you're wearing or your hair color or whom you look like to him in reference to TV or the movies. He always refers to someone from a show that he's seen. He's looking at things that are beautiful about you. His perception of beauty and what our perception is beauty is completely different, which is the way we all should look at everybody, whether it's their beauty on the outside or the beauty on the inside, and not the flaws that we may physically see or verbally hear from that person.
There's no blood test or anything like that for autism. And I just had someone reach out to me that he's an oral surgeon friend of mine, and their son is doing his PhD at Arizona State. And it's pretty exciting because I'm now an ambassador with Autism Speaks, which is really cool. But also their son, though, is his PhD work is on finding the genetic marker for autism. And I'm actually going to give him a call because I'd love to hear where that research is going, because there's so many different things. It's so misunderstood, and the services are so absent, and autism is so prevalent. Now it's 1 in 36 people have autism. I think there's probably a little bit of autism in all of us.
I think you're probably right about that.
But I think with technology and as technology grows, can that be also not a good thing? Because for me, regardless if there was a test to find out, okay, well, if you have this child, are we going to get to a society where it's, well, if you have this child, they're going to have X, Y, and Z. And then, but here's an easy way out, which is let's, just terminate that pregnancy. Is that going to be more widely available in that sense? And are people going to base their decisions on, oh, well, this could possibly be
That's scary.
a little knot in my white picket fence, scenario. So I look at that two different ways. I look at it as, okay, that would be great, because then we would be able to, through science, be able to make some decisions that can be helpful. But could there be more of a harm to that?
Yes. And there are blood tests now that you can take early in pregnancy to identify Down syndrome.
Really? I didn't even know that.
Sadly, that's true. And it's any testing for Down syndrome is purely a search and destroy mission. If we had that with autism, you can bet it would be
the
same way. What advice would you have for other parents who are navigating the world of autism?
Teresa and I just had this talk yesterday. It's regarding everything from the IEP to making a movie to we were talking about how this affects so many things in life, not just as parents, but anybody. And the point is that you've got to take action yourself. No one else is going to do it for you. No one's going to advocate for you, for your daughter, for your son, for yourself. If you're counting on someone else to do the work, to get the IEP done, to do whatever it is for your son or daughter, it's not going to happen. You've got to be your own number one. You've got to be your own advocate. You've got to take control.
My biggest advice would be to someone first and foremost is, do you have a relationship with Jesus? I'm always going to never apologize for that. And because without him, I would not have made it. It truly does take a village to raise a child, any child. But you definitely want to include that village when you have not an atypical child. So just surrounding yourself with also like-minded people, that could be a great source of respite for you.
You were talking about a village, and that segues into my next question is I'm thinking of the church family environment. And when I think of having a member who has autism, there's a little bit of anxiety that goes with that in my mind because of the unknown. How do you interact? How do you respond? Is there any advice that you would have as parents for people like me that would like to reach out, but we want to do it in effective ways?
I had to immerse myself with Austin and his peers. So, what did that look like? And well, I got involved in everything. We became Sunday school teachers and just immersed myself in everything like that. So,
If he was in your church and around you and you were wondering how to
help
you wouldn't
him.
have to worry about it because he would be in your face and talking to you, and it would take us 20 minutes to get him away. So he's very engaging. It takes us a half an hour to leave church.
Well, Teresa, what would you say to someone who asks the question, should a baby be aborted if he or she will suffer?
For me, I know that it would be very hard to make that decision. And so my first thing is definitely find your religious counselor, for me, my minister, my pastor. And if you don't have one, you're going to need that, because for me, we couldn't make that decision, even though we were told with our baby that on this medication that you're on, there's been no children born, but through science testing on this drug, the lab rats or whatever they used, babies were born with missing limbs and organs on the outside or missing organs. And so that was a tough question, because for me and my faith, I can't do that. I had to rest my faith in God that he would take care of that situation. I think that first and foremost for me would be finding out that person's faith. And if not, then helping them see that God takes care of everything. There's a reason and a purpose for every human being on this planet.
Okay, let's go to you, Austin. My name is Brad. A question I have for you. After you were diagnosed with autism, did that change the way you looked at yourself and the world in any way?
I wish I was normal.
Yeah.
So I wish it was normal. I wish I could if I didn't have autism, brittle bones, or any of that stuff, I wanted to be a professional skateboarder like Tony Hawk.
Wow.
That's what I wanted to do if I wasn't a chef. Autism has its offs and ons, but it's hard being autistic sometimes.
Well, it's hard being what they call normal too. When I look at your life, I see many good things that I wish was in my life. So I guess God makes us each different, and we are just to be happy and content with that.
So, Austin, what are some of the challenges and the joys that you've encountered as a person with autism?
Well, one, the joys are always meeting new people that I'm friends with, always helping people. The downs are I'm getting better at listening to my mom and dad, and I struggle with autism for listening to my parents because I've been going to a youth group for adult youths for church, for a group for me, and it's been helping me listen better to my parents. And I feel like my autism is getting better and it's not getting as worse. It's not really worse at all. I think that me going to church is helping me become a better person. And
Well, it's kind of tough when you're 30 years old and living with mom and dad, right?
Yep, I want to be on
and
love on the spectrum.
and not so much listen to us, but help with taking our advice. And so we like to give advice as parents, right?
Yep.
Well, Austin, what are some of the things you wish people knew or understood better about autism?
I wish they knew that autism is always a thing and people need to understand it's not a bad thing, even though I struggle with having autism. I think people need to understand autism is not a curse. I feel like it's a curse, but some people do not think it's a curse because they should try to help people, and like regular people should try to help autistic people instead of bullying them. And I think there's some special needs teachers that need to learn things before, like even cops. Cops need to learn things about autistic people. I don't think they know enough about autistic people or anyone with any type of special needs.
I don't think autism is a curse, though, Austin, because all of the things your parents told us about you are very positive things and things that I kept thinking, oh, I wish I was like that. I wish I was like that. So we all have traits that we have to struggle with in our own lives, personalities. There are many times I wish I could keep my mouth shut, but there are so many good things about you too because of the autism. So remember that next time you think about being a curse. Well, we are so glad that you guys have taken time from your busy days. We have really enjoyed getting to know you. Austin, I'm sure you are going to do marvelous things. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You know, Brad, this conversation has been such a pleasure. It's been a blessing to get the chance to speak with Austin and his parents. It just reminds me how important bringing awareness to this is, especially one thing that stands out to me a lot is the struggle that they had with educators and having to, as parents, be the advocate for their children and step up and maybe even educate the educators on some of the best ways to handle people with autism.
Yeah, and that's where patience and understanding needs to come in hand with parents because, gosh, I don't know that I would have been nearly as diplomatic as they were in those circumstances. It seems that there is a total lack of love and understanding behind some of those comments. And as you said, it's so important to make sure that people understand that.
Well, and Brad, their movie as well is such an important thing as we highlight this and we bring attention to these topics and what individuals who have autism deal with, and as well, you know, the families of people who have autism, what they deal with. You know, to see their movie in box office is a major motion picture is really pretty incredible.
And, you know, after talking with Austin, he would be somebody I'd be delighted to have as a neighbor or as a member of my church, someone who I would have almost daily interaction with because he is a delight and the world would be much worse off without him.
That's right. We would all be, the whole world would be in a much better place if each and every one of us could act just a little bit more like Austin. To you, our listener, I want to encourage you to visit our website, lifeissues.org. There you'll find more information about their movie, The Unbreakable Boy. You'll also find some resources and information to learn more about autism so that you can be that support system that people might need. Again, that's available at our website, lifeissues.org. While you're there, I want to encourage you to join the Life Defenders today. You can be a daily part of our work together to create a culture of life across America. Giving monthly, no matter how much, is a tremendous commitment to the pro-life movement, and your giving directly helps us reach more persuadable people with a pro-life message, and it enabled the very creation of this program. So help us do more for the babies by becoming a Life Defender today. Again, you can do that at our website, lifeissues.org. Be sure to tune in next week for another Straight Talk on Life Issues.